So this morning is extra special. I was watching my video previously and I was deeply touched by some phrasing, but realized that maybe it wasn't clear to the rest of my audience. And I know I used the phrase like in a cage, to have my mind in a cage. And this video hopefully will explain and tell a story as to why I use that phrasing and what that all meant. So, Ren Bartlett here. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Your favorite stomach crisis dame is going to share how she freed her mind. Why my many diagnoses helped me finally discover the journey I needed to take to actually free my mind and therefore heal my soul and then, fix the gut and heal the mental health. It was quite the journey. I knew I was on a journey. I always like that. I love stories. I love stories and I love storytelling and I love watching movies that affect me. I always say I want to watch something that affects me. I want to be affected, right? Life and life is hard enough. And so I want to step away from that for a moment and enjoy something and get lost in a story. And that way I can share characteristics with the hero and share characteristics with the villain and share in the story and go on a journey. I love it. I'm absolutely, you know what I'm addicted to in the world now? I'm addicted to stories. I really am. I love the story of life. I'm I would say I'm really descriptive. I'm really descriptive. I'm definitely long-winded. So many things have been said about me. This particular video is to tell the story the way that I experienced it. My mind is really intense, like very vivid. I have images in my mind that are so real to me, I react to them in real life. I now understand that's it. Hopefully I'll be able to break down the different diagnoses that I think would explain some of that action energy. But for me, my mind is always telling me a story. And for the first 37, 38 years, it told me a very particular story. And that's what we're going to break down today. So it begins like this. Trauma, drama, no healing, Q 35, 36 years old, adult woman. In a healthy-ish marriage, definitely needed to work on communication and, actually learning what love is and what healthy relationships look like. I came to this situation with no skills at all. This whole story is about skills. This is a story lesson about magic and skills. So I came to the relationship, no skills. Thank goodness my sweetheart stuck by my side and could see that it wasn't me trying to invoke damage. It was me being assaulted by past damage. So like I said, I always felt myself on a journey. And at about 36, give or take a day, I came across the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And that's written by Clarissa Pinkola Estés. And the book, for me, is magical. Just the best story anyone could ever read. If anybody ever asks me my favorite book, if I ever find myself in a conversation, I say Women Who Run with Wolves, Clarissa Pinkola Estés. It's thick like the Bible and it's hearty like Thanksgiving dinner, and you will have to chew it slowly. And it'll be so filling and so satiating and so delicious and so overwhelming at times, the glorious amount of food that feels like you're intaking. You'll have to put it down, and you'll have to put it down for a week. You'll have to put it down for a month. You might forget about it for a year, and then you come back to it. And much like that Bible, you don't sit down and read the Bible in a day. That's not what that's built for. You read bits of the stories. You build upon it. Clarissa Pinkola is a Jung-studied psychologist and wrote an exquisite book. It's full of stories, the oldest ones, the bones of the stories, she would say. And she traveled around the world looking for these bones and now tells stories. So there's an ugly duckling story, there's a Cinderella story, there's the story of the red shoes, and many of these old fables and mystical storytelling, whether it was around the fire or in religious with more structure, there's always a story to be told of a person doing a something, right? We're all doing a something. And so she tells the stories, she tells the bones, she shares the bones, and then she spends the next however many pages is required breaking down symbolism, breaking down meaning, breaking down how it directly means for you and affects you. And then if you find like you resonate with these pieces of delicious information, the best meal I ever ate went into my brain. It was glorious. When you've had all that explained, you now have developed skills. You follow this journey and you happen upon these skills, you develop them in the reading, in the learning. So now I find myself with these skills, much more understanding of myself, much more, well, I had a lot of rage, ain't nobody gonna lie about that, but it was very nice to just have feelings about the past. So there was a lot of rage, and then there could be a lot of compassion. It really took a long time to develop forgiveness, so I'm not even gonna use that word a lot. There was so much. It was this floodgate now of understanding, and it all came at me so intensely. But I had Clarissa and her book and her words and her information to hold me in that space. I was safe on that journey. It was scary. It was really intense. It really felt like I was living these stories, and because the connection for me just made so much sense. It was just very visceral. It was intensely visceral. Life was going all right. It was okay. Bzz. Fast forward, my family moves, and I find myself in a different occupation, in a different workspace, which ends up being toxic to make the story short. Words are hard. Making the story shorter, I became ill, really ill. And this was years, 3 years ago, 3 years ago now. I got the flu so bad. It was horrible. There's only been a couple times in my life I've been that sick. I can count on one hand. I think it's been this many times that I've been so ill that it felt like my soul was leaving my body, like I was that ill. And my boss was very unsupportive. A lot of you better have a doctor's note before you come back in here. And I'm not even going to tell you that I was great at the job, did it well, took care of his equipment, took care of several locations, cleaned up the environment. I was working as a barista, but I train, I manage, I can work on the machines. I've been making coffee for a long time. And I found my environment very, very, very unhealthy. I get sick. And because I'm ill, I can't feed myself. I can't take my regular meds, which was smoking marijuana. I'm a big fan. At that time, I had studied out a lot of cannabinoids in the brain, lack of cannabinoids, mostly CBD, a lot of CBD oils, definitely use of THC. And with the use of THC, never got high. I was like, wow, this is definitely medicine. So that's what I was using. But now I'm sick. You don't want to hear me describe how sick I was. Let's just say, couldn't breathe, couldn't smoke, couldn't chew, couldn't eat. Everything was moving in the wrong direction, and I suffered for days. So day 3, no water, no food, no real intake of anything good. My brain snapped, and the IBS that I'd already been diagnosed and the PTSD that I'd already been diagnosed snapped into suicidal idealization. I didn't know what that was. All I knew was that I thought I was going to die. It wasn't that I wanted to die. It was that all the images in my mind were of my death. It was there. It was coming for me. One more false move, one more slip step, one more let your guard down and you're going to die, and you're going to die like this. And it was so intense that I definitely knew I was crazy. I was most definitely losing my mind, and I ended up very, very violent and very, very dangerous to myself and to everybody around me. So, went to the hospital, told him I was crazy, told him that I was violent, told him that I needed to be put in a room and that nobody should ever deal with me again. Like, I was over it. It's actually interesting. I haven't told this part of the story. Fascinating now because I'm observing myself, watching myself in the story. It was really yucky, and I so grateful for my sweet man that stuck around long enough so that I could apologize for it, and now spend the last 3 years showing that that's not what I am, that is poor information, right? Misinformation and lack of skills. So I check myself in. I'm police escorted, locked car, crazy person escorted to a mental health facility wherein I spend a total of 11 days before I go home. Day 9. Really grateful for good therapists. I really am. And I'm very, 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 very grateful to my own soul that knows very quickly, like, as my physical self was experiencing different kinds of therapists, different kinds of counselors, psychotherapy. Now, like, I'm in it, right? I'm in the cuckoo bin. I can wear paper pajamas if I want to. Like, that's what's up right now. Scheduled meals, scheduled classes, you're videoed all the time. Your only getaway space is your room, and if you spend too much time there, they're knocking on your door too. I'm like, you're always watched. For somebody who suffers with what I come to find out later is severe abandonment, that didn't actually make me feel safe. It was such extreme to the other fucking extreme that it was just shocking, I think it was just shocking. However, there was enough structure there and information there now, and I'm starved for information. That's what I actually think was wrong with me. My soul, my being, my intelligence, my mental health was absolutely starved. It had never been fed. It had never been watered. It had never, ever been cared for, ever. The garden of my mind was dead. Nothing. Like, oh, it must have been a beautiful lake at once, but it sure is fucking nothing now. It was incredible how helpful all these individuals were. It really, really was. And I'm actually really grateful to be able to say thank you to the individuals, all the individuals, because there's so many levels of your care. People are watching you physically, but they're really there to care for you mentally. Just incredible. So I start getting fed properly the skills of mental survival. I knew how to take care of myself physically, but if you don't take care of yourself mentally, there is no physical you to take care of. So that part was dead. So slowly but surely, I'm taking in this information. Slowly but surely, things are starting to make sense. And slowly, that is where I receive the borderline personality disorder diagnosis, because of the extremes, how extreme everything is, and how I've really just been faking it for 38 years. Like, I was just faking it. I was not okay on the inside at all. So that's where I received that diagnosis, and I have the shakes real bad. I have, like, my body is just like, it'll convulse. It'll do like this weird like shake. It really up and around the head and the shoulders and the arms, like somebody pushed me, like something hit me. I react to nothing. And I know I look like a crazy person. So I am there. I'm doing the work. The classes begin to work after about day 3. I'm able to, they were feeding me. I didn't have to do anything but take care of me. It was really incredible. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to take care of me. I could take care of everything else. Everything else. And it was necessary that I took care of everything else, right? Because I can't take care of me. So the only thing I could do was take care of everything else. So when everything seemingly failed in my severe illness, like I had failed. So I had failed. And that was it. There was I couldn't take care of me. It's fascinating. So day 3, I think I'm okay. I'm taking in information. Day 5, I'm actually starting to thrive and doing well. Really doing well at enjoying it, actually. And I would say day 5 to day 9, I really learned. You kind of repeat the classes. You kind of get enough time to really work. And day 9, I now understand. I sit in meditation with myself. I'm safe enough in my environment that I can be in a public place, the shared space of hospital, the shared space where people could talk to me and interact with me. But I was safe enough to just be with myself, like eyes closed. I had my head tipped over and I was just like with myself, like literally I was rocking and I was stroking my own like neck and my hair, just in this very upside down, cocooned bubble. And I felt, I can't even say I felt good. I just felt safe. And all of a sudden, I'm able to go deep, so deep that I start singing to myself the song that my mother sang to me that was comforting, the sound that was comforting. And I let go. And I realized, oh, I can be safe. I can be safe with myself. I can create safe environments. The full lack of safety in my childhood that had never been dealt with, there wasn't even a Band-Aid on that wound, right? Like, there wasn't even an attempt to try to any of that. Like, that mental wound was so gangrene, was so toxic, was so putrid. Friends. So here I am. I'm finally safe with me, life-changing. I say to my sweet man, I'm good. Get me out of here. I'm ready to move forth with being well. Like, that was keeping me alive. Now it's time to be well. So somewhere now between these last couple years and really focusing on the diet, we'll break that down more in other videos. Thanks for hanging out for so long. Diet definitely played a huge role. And that's why I say you are what you take in. You are what you take in. What you take in, what touches you, it matters. It feeds yourself. It feeds the being. It is information. Food is information as well. Somewhere through all this, I found myself curious about why my brain had felt so caged. Like, now I'm ready to look at it a little closer, I guess. I was feeling brave. I was feeling well. I was really starting to feel well. And I was curious about, loved Clarissa's book. I so recommend Clarissa's book. Apparently you can get an audio version. I did not experience it that way. If you're an audio person, listen to her. I tell you, reading her words were just a fat, delicious meal. I had to loosen my belt. You hear her words? That woman's voice is velvet on pudding on whoa. Whoa. So, highly recommending. I had finished her book. I was ready. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do my own little journey, right? So I asked my husband, what do I say all the time that maybe I'm not realizing I'm saying, and in particularly what words? It's very, very important to me, words. That's what the mental health taught me. I didn't have skills. In other words, I didn't have words. I didn't know how to use words. I didn't know what things meant. You know, people would say things to me and I was like, I don't know what that means. And it was just too much trauma. It's too much, as too much trauma in the background. I didn't know what things meant. And so now I'm really curious about words and what does that mean? And am I using that word correctly? And like, you know, it just mattered. And he says to me, you know, you say about definitions a lot, like you talk about words and the need to define them. And you talk a lot about perception and how things are perceived, that you tell me, and there's no reason I don't believe you, you'll see a certain something or you'll hear a certain something and you're reacting to it in real life. And we're like, are you okay? And it's like, no. And no, right? I had nothing else around that. So being diagnosed with PTSD, having the borderline explained to me, then I understood dialectic behavioral therapy was the right medicine for my brain. So definitions, perceptions, and the cage. The cage wherein when I was finally safe with myself, I also had to acknowledge that I awoke as like, excuse me, I'm in my car studio. I awoke as a 38-year-old person who like basically stumbled out of the woods, wounded, infected, toxic, and I was like, where it like if it was amnesia, like where the fuck am I, right? So all this trauma of coming out of this, but finally being like, oh, okay, I'm okay, but now who am I? Where do I come from? What did that mean? I think that's what I needed to do. I needed to go back into it real deep and ask, what did that mean? Here's what it meant. So I go to, okay, love yoga, love ganja. I could get myself into a meditative state. So here I am. I go into my mind. I think I hear some people call it a mind palace. I just call it my mind. And I go into my mind and I tell myself I'm going to go back to my cage. So I wait for the image to come. And I see the cage. And I'm immediately find myself in this dark, like, I don't know where the light's coming from. It's dark. It's damp. It's just earth all around. I'm on the outside of the cage. So it's just the environment around me. Wet earth. Sorry if my face is making ugly faces. I could smell that wet, light mold. And then there was like this putrid rotting smell, and I'm realizing that there's these vines all up around my cage, and it's just dead vines. They were once roses. They were supposed to be roses. And there's this putrid smell overwhelming me. I'm just like experiencing it viscerally, and then I hear nothing except if I move, and it's that, you know, like under my feet, 'cause it's just wet. And it's just this space. It's kind of like this space around, and then the cage. And the roses, the vines. So I say to myself first, how did I get out of this? Right? Because the door is closed. The vines are all grown all around it. How did I get out of this to begin with? And I didn't know. I didn't have an answer. It's only now that I'm realizing I was much heavier. I actually don't know what I weigh right now, but I know I'm in a size 4 pair of jeans, and I used to be a size 18. A tight 18. 233 pounds was the exact number of the moment on a scale when I was like, I'm not okay. So I didn't know how I had escaped my cage when the door was closed and the bars were about this far apart, and all the vines had grown up. Oh, sorry. All the vines had grown up all around it. Like, how did I get out of this? So I realized to myself, once I had changed my mind, changed my food, changed my water, healed my mind, because finally my body was healed enough that I could focus on the mind. When that was finally well, I'd shrunk down. I think I'm like 170 now. You know, I'm 5'7". I'm kind of tall. I'm pretty strong, so I've got some muscle about me. And that just seems like so tiny. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so tiny. That I thought, well, maybe I snuck out between the bars. It didn't make any sense to me that the door is closed. This is very, very important. That imagery is so important. Because, okay, so that's what I decide. Now I come out of this different meditative state on a different times, like that went okay. So I go back in on a meditative state, and now I tell myself I want to be in my cage. And I do. I wake up, I'm in my cage. So all the same, everything, it's there. I really let it take over me. And the ground beneath within the cage is particularly wet. Like you can't want to hold still because you're so cold and you're so wet and it's so dark and you can't hear anything except your own weeping, which is you've just given up because ain't nobody gonna hear you. Nobody can hear you. You're nowhere. And so I choose to sit in it. I choose to tell myself to sit in it, and I sit in the corner. I'm in the corner on my bum, you know, in that knees in, you know, locked up, and I go all the way into this corner. The bars are cold, the vines are dead, and they're old. They have the thorns, you know, the thorns are like, I mean, how violent is it of a feeling that dried, rotted vine with thorns, but it's not, but it's also wet. I mean, it was horrible. So I cried. I cried in my mind. I cried and cried and cried until I got mad, until I got real angry, until I had rage. And I allowed that rage to tear down all the vines. And I felt it. I felt the tearing of my hands and my flesh and my arms as I'm just screaming and ripping and screaming and like, you know, no more, fuck this. Like I was all the way, like on the outside it's like fucking zen, and on the inside it's a monstrous story. So real. Oh my gosh. So I'm tearing down the vines. Well, now I'm in a wet, pokey, prickly, oh my gosh, like now I'm standing in it, right? And so I have to pick it up and shove it through the bars. I'm shoving it through the bars, like, get the fuck out of here. And I'm realizing I can go, like my arms go through the bars, and because I'm smaller, slender, even in my own mind, literally in reality, and then in my mind, I could get out. And I was like, what? Like, I had to be bigger than my cage so that I wouldn't dare leave. And the vines grew up, all those lies of all the roses grew up all around, and then the lies died, like, right? Like the symbolism, the metaphor. Oh my gosh, it was brilliant. So because I'm throwing out the vines, and I'm just like, you know, realizing I can go sideways, I can be in and out of these bars, but it's just terrible. It's just muck and pricks everywhere, right? Wet earth, rotted wet earth, and dead dry vines. Like that, I have a thing for gardening. I love it. And so I'm this close, like I'm right here up against the bar, right? Like I'm throwing stuff out and I'm right here by the bar, and I realize there's etching in the metal. Point of fact, also in that moment, because I'm throwing out the vines, there's a little more light. Still don't know where it's coming from, but things are becoming clearer. So in this little bit of light and with the bar right up against my face, I'm like, oh, what is that? So now I'm reading all the bars, every single piece on the bar. And now I start to dig down into the earth a little bit too, and I'm trying to find the full shape of the bar. I have to know. There's so many messages. So I go all the way around through it. And I suppose I could say, it'd be truthful to say that was me finding my skills, making sense of my skills, this newfound development of language, definitions, the necessity for long conversation, of dialogue wherein I can share my perception of something, right? I have to be descriptive. I have to take the time. So I was there and I was just, all the messages. And now I've read every message. I've dug down into the earth. I can see the fucking cage and I see the door. And I'm like, well, I got to find the key. And there's no message on the bars as to where the key is. It felt like all those messages were the wisdom of the women before me. And I'll tell you why. Clarissa talks about the over-domestication of women. Women who run with wolves is connected very intricately that women and wolves have been fiercely hunted, misunderstood, and caged. There's been a war against these radical women that want to live a truthful and wild life. They want to be a visceral, life-giving, thought-provoking, real fucking woman. And they don't want to be overly domesticized. They don't want to be caged. They don't want to be told to sit with their legs crossed and be a good girl. Turns out women don't actually want to be told that. Turns out that shit kills your soul. Because the moment you believe that, the moment you believe you're less than, or that you're only for this, or that it really doesn't matter anyways, the second you are ignored, abandoned, overly criticized, questioned in your youth, in your innocence, in your desire to be creative and ask questions and be adventurous, the moment you're told no adventure for you, young lady, that's not how young ladies behave. No, you can't have this. You can't do that. That's not what good girls do. The second this dialogue enters your life, you're in a cage. And you're a caged, wild creature. And what will a wild creature do in a cage? You're going to eat up your own fucking self. You're going to absolutely be gnawing at yourself. You're going to be foaming at the mouth. You have been, your whole life has been taken from you. So in my cage, it is clear to me that this is all the wisdom of the women before me, yet there is no information on the key. Where is the key? Well, I have nothing else to do in this cage. So I start looking for the key, and I'm digging, 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 because I can find the bottom of my cage. At this point now, I could actually pick it up and move it around. It's becoming lighter. It's becoming easier to manage. I see its shape. It's no longer stuck in here. Yet I can't find the key. So I'm just I'm checking the bars, and I'm moving all things around. So now I get to the door, and I'm really investigating the door. And I'm looking at the keyhole and all these other things, and I'm looking at it, and I barely touch it, and it swings open. That's right. The damn door wasn't even locked. I just assumed because it was closed that it was locked, and now it makes sense. That's why all the vines were there. There never was a key. All that is a lie. All that is such astronomical bullshit that now I'm realizing it's the manure that I'm standing in. Just shit. Whoever planted this garden, whatever woman in my lineage first accepted, no, don't you dare be that wild. No, don't you dare speak that truth. No, don't you dare live that fiercely. The first woman who ever accepted that as her reality built this damn place. Like, and she's long gone. So all of her offspring, all of her female dependents, dividends, genealogy, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, ancestors, all of those women are now more and more caged and more dead and more cut off by the light. And we're developing all of these eat ourselves kind of reactions of addiction and narcissism and just lying to lie because that's the lie you were told. And all of a sudden, I didn't believe the lie that was never told anymore. I was like, there's no fucking key. Then what is this cage? And I had to get out of my mind palace. And I had to step away. And I'm sure it was a few months. And bless my husband again. And bless Clarissa's book again, because I definitely went back to reading. And I talked a lot to him. He listens incredibly well. Probably the best listener I've ever known. So I'm just like a lot of rage, a lot of anger, extreme frustration, because to me, the piece that I lack, this last thing that I feel like I don't have is my own voice, right? I don't have words. I don't have definitions. I can't articulate my perceptions. I'm stuck in a damn cage. And so frustrating. And so I have to just go back to this place and I sit in it again. Well, now all the vines are torn out. And when I get there, the ground is a little more, it's less wet. I think I'll just say that. It's less wet and it's less dark and it's less damp. And it's not locked anymore. It's not locked anymore. Door's wide open. And I'm just in there. And oh my gosh, forgive me. Forgive me if this sounds absolutely ridiculous. As I'm about to say it, it sounds ridiculous. But I meditated in my meditated space. I just had to sit there and ask myself, where is my fucking voice? Who took it from me? There's no answer there. That shit doesn't even matter. And that's why I say it's irrelevant. There was no answer for me. Who took it? It doesn't matter. Where is it? Where is it? Where did it go? And again, thankful to stories. Thankful to stories. May we always be blessed with storytellers in the world, because all of a sudden, The Little Mermaid comes into my mind. Now, she gave up her voice. She sold it fair and square for the chance to be human, for the chance to find love, for the chance to be real, and for the opportunity to legs to walk. She gave it up. She really was going on that her body and her connection and this, she was blinded. She was a maiden, and she gave up something she shouldn't have given up. Sealskin, soul skin. Careful what you give up. Because once you give it up, nobody has a reason to give it back. And they have lots of reasons to drop guilt and shame and accusations your way. So where is my voice? I just start digging, friends. I just start digging. Now this time, the soil is free of vines. It's free of over wet muck rot, right? So it's a pleasant dig. It's actually joyful. And I find myself singing, and I find myself like da-da-da-da, like do. Well, we're going to just keep digging because I'm not leaving today without my voice. And there it was in the soil, just randomly, the last place you ever think to look. Last place I ever thought to look was that my voice was inside of me, that it was inside of my mind. And I find myself today with much compassion and a lot of gratitude, thankful for those diagnoses, because then I could be on the correct journey. Loved stories, loved adventure, always wanted to be super adventurous. Definitely was overly domesticated and told that I was bad. Thank goodness for Clarissa's book that was like, you sing, you dance, you paint, whatever your magic is, whatever your art is, whatever that thing is that you desire to do it. Because that is the health of the soul. That is the wholeness of being. And I am a dancer. I am a mover. I must have movement. Must. And there it is, my beautiful voice. This earth is all turned up. Cage is just there with her messages. In fact, that's comforting. I can go back from time to time. Maybe I'm ready for different lessons, different messages, different information. But that is the cage. That was the first half of my life, because I don't intend to die. So 40 now, and truly, truly grateful. Really, really grateful. Because I did it. Now I got my voice. Incidentally, I picked up swearing because that was definitely definitely a caged reaction to naughtiness. You and that foul mouth and that terrible language. You should never speak that way. Well, fucking fuck. I'm going to say exactly what I want to say. And now that I can say it, it's less necessary. That is the story of the beginning of definitions, perceptions, and the cage. If anybody has stolen your voice, if you feel overly domesticated, if you find yourself saying things like, I feel like I'm in a cage, or I just feel like this is dead, or I feel like, anytime you find yourself using these descriptive words, understand, I think that is the soul telling you what they need, like what's happening. That's a symptomatic expression of a diseased soul, right? There is no disease in the world. There's only dis-ease. So if the soul is diseased, it's going to manifest these symptoms. If the mind is diseased, it's going to manifest these symptoms. If the gut is diseased, it's going to manifest these symptoms. And that has been my journey. It started out with the gut. Why? Why this? Why that? Why this? Why that? Then it really manifested mentally. Why this? Why that? Why this? Why that? And then I really started to try to find some answers. And finally, my soul is appeased. And this was crazy talk, definitely magical imagery, and you don't gotta buy it for $1. It's free. Take it or leave it, my friends. Pick it up or put it down, because that is the only choice that any of us really have. Oh my gosh. Anybody who was kind enough to stay and listen to me this story, thank you kindly. Please remember to subscribe. Definitely like my stuff. Please send me more information too of other people you've heard and other people you've read, and information you would have that we can share for one another. We've got to start building up this community. I love you. Many blessings. See you soon.